I need to see your identification right now.
Excuse me, officer. I'm a licensed pharmacist. I work here.
That's not what I asked. Show me your ID and documentation proving you're legally in this country.
I am a United States citizen. This is harassment, and it's unconstitutional.
Officer Daniel Crowley believed he was following procedure. An anonymous tip. A suspicious black woman working behind the counter at a neighborhood pharmacy. Possible identity fraud. Possible immigration issue. In Crowley's mind, requesting identification was routine. Compliance was expected. He had made dozens of similar stops during his career, usually based on nothing more than intuition, tone of voice, or appearance. Rarely questioned. Never seriously challenged. His badge, he believed, granted him the authority to demand answers and documents whenever something felt off. That belief would cost the city of Mesa, Arizona $14.6 million. The mistake began on a clear Tuesday afternoon in early May, when Officer Crowley walked into Redwood Community Pharmacy and demanded citizenship papers from the woman behind the counter. He had no idea he was confronting someone who understood the Constitution better than he did. Dr. Alicia Reynolds was a licensed pharmacist with over 14 years of professional experience. She was born in San Antonio, Texas, raised in a military family, and had spent nearly a decade serving patients in the Mesa area. Her credentials were spotless, her record flawless, and she immediately recognized what was happening. When Crowley demanded identification to verify her legal status, Dr. Reynolds refused, calmly, clearly, and lawfully, citing her Fourth Amendment right to be free from unreasonable seizures. What followed would unravel an entire police career. Before we continue, where are you watching from? If this is your first time here, hit that subscribe button. Stories like this matter, and sharing them brings accountability into the light. Officer Crowley had served with the Mesa Police Department for 8 years, assigned to the Downtown Patrol Division. His supervisors described him as assertive and proactive. His personnel file told a different story. He had accumulated 6 civilian complaints, most alleging racial profiling and unlawful stops. None resulted in suspension, none led to discipline. Each was quietly dismissed as unsubstantiated. Crowley operated under a dangerous assumption that the Fourth Amendment was flexible and that suspicion didn't require evidence. At 1:52 p.m., dispatch received an anonymous call reporting a black female employee at Redwood Pharmacy who was acting strangely and might be using a false identity. No name. No description of criminal behavior. No verification. Under the law, the call alone was meaningless. Crowley ignored that. He requested backup from Officer Laura Kim, and the two arrived at the pharmacy at 2:18 p.m., body cameras activated. The Arizona sun cast harsh light across the parking lot, creating perfect visibility and perfect footage. Redwood Community Pharmacy sat in a small retail strip near a residential neighborhood. Large windows displayed health posters and vaccination notices. Inside, several customers browsed the aisles while 2 waited at the prescription counter. Behind that counter stood Dr. Alicia Reynolds. She wore a white lab coat neatly pressed, her name badge clearly visible. A framed pharmacy license hung on the wall behind her, along with certifications and continuing education awards. She was explaining medication instructions to an elderly woman when the glass door opened and the entry bell chimed. Crowley walked straight toward the counter. His hand rested on his duty belt, his posture rigid, purposeful. "Excuse me," he called out, his voice cutting through the pharmacy. Dr. Reynolds finished her explanation, handed the customer her prescription, and wished her a good afternoon. Only then did she turn. "How can I help you, officer?" Crowley stepped closer. "I need to see your identification," he said, "and documentation showing you're authorized to work in this country." The room went silent. Customers stopped moving. Conversations died mid-sentence. Dr. Reynolds blinked once, confusion giving way to understanding. "I'm sorry," she replied evenly. "Can you explain why?" "We received a complaint," Crowley said. "I need to verify your legal status." Dr. Reynolds placed her hands calmly on the counter. "Officer, I'm a licensed pharmacist. My credentials are displayed right behind me." "That doesn't verify your citizenship," Crowley replied dismissively. "I need government-issued ID." "Now," Dr. Reynolds inhaled slowly. "I'm a U.S. citizen," she said, "born in Texas, and unless you can articulate a specific crime you suspect me of committing, you do not have legal authority to demand my identification." Crowley stiffened. "This is a lawful investigation," he said. "If you have nothing to hide, you shouldn't have a problem cooperating." The word cooperating hung in the air. Dr. Reynolds' voice remained steady. "Officer, this is not a lawful detention. An anonymous complaint without specific facts does not create reasonable suspicion. Detaining me or demanding identification under these circumstances violates the Fourth Amendment." Officer Kim shifted uncomfortably behind him. She knew Dr. Reynolds was right. and Crowley knew he was being challenged. The confrontation was only beginning. Officer Crowley's jaw tightened. He had not expected resistance, certainly not legal resistance. "Ma'am," he said, lowering his voice while stepping closer to the counter, "I'm trying to handle this professionally. A complaint was made. I'm obligated to follow up." "Following up requires lawful grounds," Dr. Reynolds replied. "And you don't have them." Officer Kim's body camera captured her shifting weight from one foot to the other. She glanced briefly at the framed license on the wall, Dr. Alicia Reynolds, PharmD, complete with state seal and registration number. Crowley ignored it. "Show me your ID," he repeated, "or this becomes a bigger issue." "A bigger issue for whom?" Dr. Reynolds asked. "Because right now you're unlawfully detaining me based on race and an anonymous accusation." The word race landed hard. Crowley's face flushed, the change clearly visible on both body cameras under the bright interior lighting. "This has nothing to do with race," he snapped. "You're obstructing an investigation." "There is no investigation," Dr. Reynolds replied calmly. "There is a baseless tip and your assumption. That's not reasonable suspicion." The pharmacy's security cameras quietly documented everything. 3 ceiling-mounted cameras captured wide angles of the store. One covered the entrance, one monitored the sales floor, and one looked directly down onto the pharmacy counter and restricted workspace. Audio was synced and time-stamped. Crowley glanced upward just briefly, noticing the cameras. Then he doubled down. "Ma'am," he said firmly, "this is your final opportunity to cooperate." Dr. Reynolds' voice sharpened, though she never raised it. "Officer, I am cooperating with the law. I am not required to surrender my rights to satisfy your curiosity." Officer Kim cleared her throat. "Dan," she said quietly, "we don't have reasonable suspicion. She's right." Crowley shot her a warning look. "Stay out of this." Kim fell silent, her hesitation preserved forever on video. Crowley leaned forward, placing his hands on the counter. "You can either show me your papers," he said, "or I will verify your identity myself." "You will not," Dr. Reynolds replied, stepping sideways to block the gate leading behind the counter. "This is a restricted medical area. You have no warrant, no consent, and no exigent circumstances." Customers began whispering. One woman near the shelves slowly backed away, phone partially raised. Crowley reached for the gate latch. Dr. Reynolds placed her hand over it, holding it closed. "I am not resisting," she said clearly. "I am asserting my constitutional rights." That sentence changed everything. Crowley's hand dropped to his handcuffs. "That's it," he said. "You're being detained." "For what?" Dr. Reynolds demanded. "What crime?" "Obstruction," Crowley replied. "Failure to identify." Officer Kim's body camera captured her exhale, slow, heavy. "This is unlawful," Dr. Reynolds said, her voice now echoing through the silent pharmacy. "You cannot arrest someone for refusing an unlawful order." Crowley forced the gate open. The overhead security camera recorded the moment clearly. Crowley pushing forward, Dr. Reynolds stumbling backward, her hands raised defensively. "You are making a mistake," she said. Crowley grabbed her arm. "You're under arrest." Metal cuffs snapped shut. The sound echoed sharp and unmistakable across every recording device in the building. Gasps rippled through the store. One customer covered her mouth. Another turned away, shaken. Officer Kim stood frozen for a moment, then slowly moved behind the counter at Crowley's command. "Search her bag," he ordered. Kim hesitated. "We don't have." "Search incident to arrest," Crowley cut in. Reluctantly, Kim opened Dr. Reynolds' purse. Her camera captured everything. A wallet, keys, medical notes, then the ID, a Texas driver's license, a U.S. passport card, a DEA registration, all valid, all real. "She's American," Kim said quietly. "Born in San Antonio." Crowley's grip tightened. "Take her anyway," he said. She obstructed. Dr. Reynolds looked straight into the body camera as she was led away. "You just arrested a U.S. citizen for asserting the Fourth Amendment," she said. "This will not end well for you." And for the first time, doubt flickered across Officer Crowley's face. The walk to the patrol car felt unreal. Dr. Alicia Reynolds moved through the pharmacy in handcuffs, her white lab coat still on, her name badge swinging slightly with each step. Every eye followed her. Customers stood frozen, unsure whether to speak, record, or look away. The entrance camera captured the moment they exited the store. 2:36 p.m., 17 minutes after Officer Crowley had walked in. The heat outside was brutal. The late afternoon sun reflected off the asphalt, wrapping the parking lot in shimmering waves. Crowley opened the rear door of his patrol car and guided Dr. Reynolds forward with a hand on her upper arm. "Watch your head," he said flatly, pushing her inside. The door slammed shut. Inside the vehicle, the air was stale and hot. Sweat formed along Dr. Reynolds' temples almost immediately. She closed her eyes briefly, steadying her breath, then looked directly at the body camera mounted behind the front seats. "My name is Dr. Alicia Marie Reynolds," she said clearly. "I am a licensed pharmacist and a United States citizen. I was born in San Antonio, Texas. I have never been arrested. I have never committed a crime. Her voice was calm, controlled, but resolute. Officer Daniel Crowley entered my workplace and demanded that I provide citizenship documents without reasonable suspicion or probable cause. When I cited the Fourth Amendment and refused his unlawful order, he arrested me. This arrest is unconstitutional and racially motivated. Every word was recorded, time-stamped, geolocated, permanent. Officer Kim climbed into the passenger seat. Her camera briefly captured Crowley's profile, jaw clenched, eyes forward. "This is bad," she said quietly. "You know that, right?" Crowley didn't respond. "Dan," she pressed. She was right. We didn't have reasonable suspicion. "Drive," he snapped. The patrol car pulled away, traffic crawled, the dashboard clock advanced in silence. 2:51 p.m., 3:04 p.m., 3:17 p.m. Officer Kim glanced back several times. Dr. Reynolds sat upright, hands cuffed behind her back, gaze fixed on the window. Sweat darkened the collar of her coat. She didn't cry, she didn't speak. At 3:29 p.m., they arrived at the Mesa Police Department. Processing began immediately. Crowley explained the arrest to the booking officer, his body camera capturing the reaction, raised eyebrows, a skeptical pause. "You arrested a pharmacist at her job for not showing ID?" the booking officer asked. "She obstructed an investigation," Crowley replied. "What investigation?" An uncomfortable silence followed. "A complaint," Crowley said finally. "Possible identity fraud." "And what evidence did you personally observe?" the officer asked. Crowley hesitated. His pen hovered above the paperwork. The booking officer looked at Officer Kim. "She didn't resist," Kim said quietly. "She cited the Fourth Amendment," the booking officer sighed. "She's being processed anyway," he said, "but this is going to get reviewed. Fingerprints, photos, a mugshot." Dr. Reynolds stood in front of the camera, eyes steady, expression dignified despite the humiliation. Her name was run through every database. No warrants, no criminal history, no flags, exactly who she said she was. She was placed in a holding cell, the door closed with a metallic echo. Dr. Reynolds sat on the bench, back straight, hands resting in her lap. She stared at the concrete wall, replaying the encounter in her mind, the demand for papers, the dismissal of her credentials, the moment asserting her rights turned into handcuffs. 7 hours passed. At 10:41 p.m., she was released on her own recognizance. Charges: obstruction of justice and failure to identify during a lawful investigation. Public record, professional damage already done. But Dr. Reynolds wasn't afraid. 5 days later, she walked into the offices of the Arizona Civil Rights Project and sat across from attorney Michael Alvarez, a veteran civil liberties litigator. As she finished her account, Alvarez leaned back slowly. "What happened to you," he said, "is a textbook Fourth Amendment violation." Dr. Reynolds nodded. "And we can prove it," he added. She slid a flash drive across the desk. "Every camera caught it," she said, "every angle." Alvarez smiled grimly. "Good," he replied. "Then this changes everything." Michael Alvarez didn't waste time. Within 48 hours, preservation letters were sent to the Mesa Police Department demanding that all body camera footage, dispatch records, internal communications, and arrest reports related to Dr. Reynolds be secured. Simultaneously, subpoenas were prepared for Redwood Community Pharmacy's complete security system archive. 3 weeks later, the evidence arrived. Alvarez watched everything start to finish. Both officers' body camera recordings. 3 synchronized CCTV angles. Audio clear enough to hear breathing, footsteps, hesitation. The footage told a devastating story. It showed Officer Crowley entering the pharmacy and immediately demanding identification without explanation. No preliminary questions. No attempt to verify the complaint. No effort to speak with the store owner or supervisor. It showed Dr. Reynolds calmly asserting her rights, accurately citing the Fourth Amendment, explaining why the demand was unlawful and offering lawful alternatives. It showed Crowley dismissing her credentials, escalating the encounter, and physically entering a restricted medical workspace without a warrant or consent. Most damning of all, it showed retaliation. When Dr. Reynolds refused to comply with an unlawful order, Crowley arrested her. The overhead camera angle made it undeniable. Dr. Reynolds never resisted, never obstructed, never threatened. Her movements were defensive, blocking an unauthorized entry, not interfering with a lawful duty. Officer Kim's hesitation was also unmistakable. Her body camera captured her warning Crowley that they lacked reasonable suspicion. Her reluctance to search Dr. Reynolds' belongings. Her quiet confirmation that the documents proved U.S. citizenship. And then, the moment that sealed the case, Crowley ordering the arrest anyway. Alvarez paused the footage and leaned back in his chair. "This is retaliation under color of law," he said, "and it's all on video." The criminal charges were dropped 6 weeks later. The county prosecutor issued a dismissal memo citing lack of reasonable suspicion, unlawful detention, and evidence suggesting racial bias. The memo specifically referenced both the police body cameras and the pharmacy's security footage. But dismissal wasn't justice. Alvarez filed a federal civil rights lawsuit in the United States District Court for the District of Arizona. Dr. Alicia Reynolds v. City of Mesa, Officer Daniel Crowley, and Officer Laura Kim. The complaint alleged violations of the Fourth Amendment, false arrest, unlawful seizure, retaliation for exercising constitutional rights, selective enforcement based on race, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The city's response was immediate and insulting. They offered $30,000 to settle. Alvarez rejected it without discussion. "This case is going to trial," he told Dr. Reynolds. "And the jury is going to see everything." Discovery was brutal. Internal emails revealed Crowley had been warned before. Training records showed repeated instruction on reasonable suspicion standards. Prior complaints, once dismissed, were suddenly relevant. Depositions were worse. Under oath, Crowley admitted he never observed criminal behavior. He admitted the anonymous tip contained no specific facts. He admitted Dr. Reynolds' license was visible behind the counter. "So why did you demand proof of citizenship?" Alvarez asked. Crowley paused. "I needed to verify," he said. "Verify what?" Alvarez pressed. Silence. Officer Kim testified next. Her voice shook. "I knew we didn't have reasonable suspicion," she admitted. "I told him." The trial began 20 months after the arrest. The courtroom was packed: civil rights advocates, healthcare professionals, members of the black community, and national media outlets. Every seat filled. On day one, the footage played, split screens, multiple angles. The jury watched Crowley's approach, his demand for papers, his dismissal of the Constitution, his arrest of a professional woman for asserting her rights. Several jurors wiped tears from their eyes. Others stared at Crowley in disbelief. Dr. Reynolds testified over 2 days. She spoke about her education, her career, her service to the community, and the humiliation of being treated as a suspect in her own workplace. "I have degrees on my wall," she told the jury, "but none of them protected me from being seen as suspicious." The defense argued qualified immunity. Alvarez dismantled it piece by piece. "She told him the law," he said. "He ignored it. That's not a mistake, that's willful misconduct." The jury deliberated for 3 days. When they returned, the courtroom held its breath. The foreperson stood. "We find for the plaintiff on all counts." The room erupted. But the most powerful moment was yet to come. The verdict was only the beginning. What followed was the damages phase, and it exposed the true cost of what Officer Crowley had done. Over the next 2 weeks, the jury heard testimony that went far beyond the arrest itself. They heard about the panic attacks Dr. Reynolds experienced after her release, how she flinched at the sight of patrol cars, how she avoided driving past police stations, how she struggled to sleep, replaying the sound of the handcuffs clicking shut in her mind. A licensed psychiatrist testified that the trauma was consistent with acute stress disorder evolving into PTSD, intensified by the fact that the arrest occurred in her workplace, a space that should have been safe. They heard from the owner of Redwood Community Pharmacy. He described customers who stopped coming, prescriptions transferred elsewhere, parents who told him they didn't feel comfortable returning after seeing a pharmacist arrested on the news. "Yes," he testified, "we lost business, but more than that, we lost trust." An economist calculated the financial damage: lost wages during suspension, delayed career advancement, future earnings diminished by public arrest records and media exposure, therapy costs, legal defense expenses. The numbers added up quickly. Then came the testimony that changed the room. Dr. Reynolds returned to the stand. She spoke quietly, deliberately. "I didn't lose my freedom because I committed a crime," she said. "I lost it because I said no." She described the weight black professionals carry, the constant need to prove legitimacy, the exhaustion of knowing that credentials don't guarantee dignity. "I followed the law," she told the jury, "and I was punished for it." The defense tried to minimize the harm. They argued the arrest was brief, that the charges were dropped, that no lasting damage had occurred. The jury didn't believe them. When deliberations ended, the courtroom filled once again. The foreperson stood. "For compensatory damages," he read, "we award $7.9 million. Gasps echoed through the gallery. Then came the second figure. "For punitive damages," he continued, "to punish and deter future misconduct, we award $6.7 million. Total, $14.6 million. The largest civil rights verdict in Mesa's history." Dr. Reynolds closed her eyes, overwhelmed. Officer Crowley stared straight ahead. Within hours, the consequences followed. Crowley was terminated for cause. Officer Kim received a 90-day suspension and was reassigned to administrative duty indefinitely. The Mesa Police Department announced immediate policy reforms: mandatory Fourth Amendment retraining, clear prohibitions on ID demands without reasonable suspicion, automatic review of any arrest following constitutional challenges, independent oversight for racial profiling complaints. Dr. Reynolds used part of the settlement to establish the Constitutional Rights Legal Fund, offering free representation to individuals unlawfully detained or arrested for refusing illegal ID demands. She began speaking publicly. Law schools, medical conferences, community forums, her message was simple. The Constitution only works if we insist on it. The footage from Redwood Pharmacy became required viewing in police academies across the state, a permanent lesson in what happens when authority overrides law. But the story wasn't finished yet, because what Dr. Reynolds did next ensured this would never be forgotten. Dr. Alicia Reynolds didn't disappear after the verdict. She understood something critical: justice only matters if it leaves a mark. Within months, her case was being cited in court filings across the country. Civil rights attorneys referenced it when challenging unlawful detentions. Judges quoted portions of the ruling when denying qualified immunity defenses. Law enforcement agencies quietly updated training materials, even when they refused to admit why. The footage made denial impossible. Police academies began using the Redwood Pharmacy recordings as instructional material. Recruits watched the same confrontation from 3 angles: body cameras and overhead surveillance, learning exactly where lawful policing ended and constitutional violation began. This, instructors told them, is what not to do. Dr. Reynolds became a reluctant symbol. She testified before state oversight committees, describing how quickly professionalism was stripped away once suspicion took over. How compliance was demanded not because of evidence but because of appearance. "I wasn't treated as a pharmacist," she said. "I was treated as a problem." National media outlets requested interviews. She declined many. She wasn't interested in celebrity. She was interested in impact. Instead, she focused on the Constitutional Rights Legal Fund, quietly paying legal fees for teachers, nurses, warehouse workers, people detained for refusing unlawful ID demands. Each case followed a familiar pattern: anonymous tip, vague suspicion, escalation when rights were asserted, and each time the law was on their side. Behind closed doors, the Mesa Police Department struggled with fallout. Internal audits uncovered patterns that could no longer be ignored. Officers trained by the same supervisors. Stops initiated without articulable facts. Reports padded after the fact to justify actions already taken. Federal monitors were assigned, policy language changed, but culture resisted. Some officers resented Dr. Reynolds. They blamed her for increased scrutiny, for paperwork, for hesitation in the field. They called it the Reynolds effect, as if accountability were a burden. She heard about it. It didn't deter her. What stayed with her most, however, wasn't the money or the reforms. It was the moment in the patrol car. The clarity with which she had spoken, knowing it was being recorded, knowing it mattered. That moment became the opening clip in dozens of civil rights seminars. A calm voice in handcuffs explaining the Constitution better than the person enforcing the law. Dr. Reynolds returned to Redwood Pharmacy 1 year later. The store looked the same. The shelves, the counter, the cameras still there, quietly watching. Customers greeted her warmly. Some hugged her. Others simply said thank you. She stepped behind the counter, put on her white coat, and went back to work, because the goal was never to leave. The goal was to belong without conditions. Still, one question lingered. Would this case actually change anything long-term? Or would it fade into another headline, another payout, another forgotten lesson? That answer would come sooner than anyone expected. The answer came quietly. 6 months after Dr. Reynolds returned to work, a new case reached the Arizona courts. Different city, different officer. Same pattern: an anonymous tip, a demand for identification, a citizen who said no. This time the officer hesitated. Body camera footage showed him pause after the refusal. He radioed a supervisor. The detention ended without arrest. In the court filing that followed, the judge cited Reynolds v. City of Mesa. The precedent had landed. Dr. Reynolds learned about it through an email from Michael Alvarez. "They're using your case," he wrote, "exactly the way we hoped." That was the real verdict, not the money, not the headlines, not the termination. It was the shift, subtle, imperfect, but real. Across the state, officers began asking different questions. Supervisors pushed back when reports lacked articulable facts. Defense attorneys stopped settling early. Prosecutors became more cautious. The Constitution, long treated as optional in certain encounters, regained weight. Dr. Reynolds never claimed the system was fixed. She knew better, but she also knew this. One recorded refusal, backed by knowledge and courage, had forced accountability where silence never could. On the anniversary of her arrest, she posted a single sentence online. "Rights only work if you use them." The post went viral. Thousands shared their own stories, some painful, some hopeful, many unresolved. Dr. Reynolds read them all. And every time she stepped behind the counter at Redwood Pharmacy, she did so knowing something had changed, not because power granted permission, but because someone refused to surrender dignity. Her case became required reading in civil rights courses, required viewing in police academies, a reminder that authority does not define legality, and that cameras, when truth is on their side, can protect more than property. They can protect people. If you believe no one should be forced to prove they belong in their own country and that constitutional rights apply equally to everyone, make sure you're subscribed to this channel. Stories like this only matter if they're seen, discussed, and remembered. Now tell us in the comments, should police be allowed to demand identification based on anonymous tips alone, or did this officer cross a line? And where are you watching from? Your voice matters here.